When Clint Eastwood passed by a crowded art booth on the city sidewalk, most people didn't notice him. He was just a passerby. But when he stopped, he picked up a painting and listened quietly to the girl in front of the booth. Then everything changed, because she wasn't just a girl, she was a cancer fighter. What happened, and what did Clint Eastwood cause? We will know all these details in our story, but if you like the video, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. The sun was setting over the city, casting a golden hue on the bustling streets. Among the throngs of people rushing home, there was a young woman sitting on the sidewalk, her easel set up, brushes in hand, and a collection of paintings displayed around her. Her name was Lily, a 22-year-old artist with a passion for life that belied her frail appearance. Her once vibrant auburn hair was now a short, uneven crop, a result of the relentless chemotherapy she was undergoing. But her eyes, a striking shade of green, still held a spark of hope and determination. Lily had been diagnosed with stage 3 ovarian cancer 6 months ago. The news had shattered her world, but she refused to let it define her. She had always been a fighter, and this was just another battle she was determined to win. However, the cost of her treatment was astronomical, and her insurance barely covered a fraction of it. With no family to turn to and limited savings, Lily had to find a way to fund her chemotherapy. That's when she decided to take her art to the streets. Every day, rain or shine, Lily would set up her modest art suite on a busy corner of the city. Her paintings were a reflection of her journey, vivid, emotional, and raw. Each piece told a story of pain, hope, and resilience. She poured her heart into every brush stroke, hoping that someone would see the value in her work and help her in her fight for survival. Most people passed by without a second glance. Some would stop, offering words of sympathy but little else. A few would buy a small piece, but it was never enough to cover the mounting medical bills. Lily's spirit wavered at times, but she refused to give up. She knew that every painting she sold was a step closer to her next treatment, a step closer to survival. One evening, as the city lights began to flicker on, Lily was packing up her art supplies. The day had been particularly discouraging, with only one small sale to show for hours of work. She was tired, both physically and emotionally, and the weight of her struggle felt heavier than ever. Just as she was about to fold up her easel, a shadow fell across her paintings. She looked up to see an older man standing before her, his sharp blue eyes scanning her artwork with a thoughtful expression. He was tall, with a commanding presence, and there was something familiar about him that Lily couldn't quite place. He wore a simple jacket and jeans, but there was an air of authority about him that set him apart from the usual passers-by. "These are quite remarkable," he said, his voice low and gravelly. He picked up one of her paintings, a hauntingly beautiful piece that depicted a lone tree standing resiliently against a stormy sky. "You've captured something very powerful here." Lily's heart skipped a beat. "Thank you," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. It's a part of my story." The man nodded, his eyes still fixed on the painting. "Art has a way of telling stories that words can't," he said. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Lily felt as though he could see straight into her soul. "What's your name, young lady?" "Lily," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Lily Carter." "Well, Lily Carter," the man said, a small smile playing on his lips, "I think the world needs to see your art." Before Lily could respond, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. He handed it to her, and she took it, with shaking hands. The name on the card made her breath catch in her throat. Clint Eastwood. Lily's eyes widened in disbelief. She looked up at him, her mind racing. You're Clint Eastwood? She stammered. He chuckled softly. Guilty as charged, he said. I've been in this business a long time, and I know talent when I see it. You've got something special, Lily. Don't let it go to waste. Lily was speechless. She had just been handed a lifeline by one of the most legendary figures in Hollywood. Her mind was a whirlwind of emotions, shock, gratitude, hope. But before she could find the words to express her thanks, Clint Eastwood gave her a nod and turned to walk away. "Wait!" Lily called after him, her voice breaking. I don't know how to thank you." He paused and looked back at her, his eyes twinkling with a hint of mischief. "Just keep painting, Lily," he said. "And don't give up. The world is waiting for your story." And with that, he disappeared into the crowd, leaving Lily standing there, clutching the business card like a lifeline. Her mind was racing with possibilities. Could this really be happening? Could Clint Eastwood, of all people, be the answer to her prayers? As she packed up her things and headed home, Lily felt a renewed sense of purpose. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, she felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, her story was about to take a turn for the better. The days that followed were a blur. Lily reached out to the contact on the business card, and before she knew it, she was sitting in a sleek office, discussing her art with a team of people who seemed genuinely interested in her work. They talked about exhibitions, galleries, and even the possibility of a solo show. It was all so overwhelming, but Lily couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement she hadn't felt in months. As the weeks turned into months, Lily's life began to change in ways she never could have imagined. Her paintings started to gain recognition, and soon she was being featured in art magazines and online platforms. People were drawn to the raw emotion in her work, and her story resonated with many who had faced their own struggles. But amidst all the newfound success, Lily never forgot the man who had given her a chance. She often wondered if she would ever see Clint Eastwood again, if she would ever have the opportunity to thank him properly. She knew that without his intervention, none of this would have been possible. One evening, as Lily was preparing for her first major exhibition, she received a message that stopped her in her tracks. It was an invitation to a private event, hosted by none other than Clint Eastwood himself. The event was to celebrate the launch of a new project, and Lily was invited as a special guest. Her heart raced as she read the message. This was her chance. She would finally be able to thank him, to tell him how much his kindness had meant to her. She spent the next few days preparing for the event, choosing the perfect outfit and rehearsing what she would say. The night of the event arrived, and Lily found herself standing in front of a grand mansion, her nerves on edge. She took a deep breath and stepped inside, her eyes scanning the room for the man who had changed her life. And then she saw him. Clint Eastwood was standing across the room, surrounded by a group of people, but his eyes met hers almost immediately. He excused himself from the conversation and made his way over to her, a warm smile on his face. "Lily," he said, his voice as gravelly as she remembered. "I'm so glad you could make it." Lily's throat tightened, and for a moment she couldn't speak. But then she found her voice, and the words poured out. "Mr. Eastwood, I don't know how to thank you. You have no idea what you've done for me. You've given me a chance to live, to keep fighting. I'll never be able to repay you." Clint Eastwood's smile softened, and he placed a hand on her shoulder. "Lily, you don't have to repay me," he said. "You've already done that by continuing to create. by sharing your story with the world. That's all the thanks I need." Tears welled up in Lily's eyes, and she nodded, unable to find the words to express the depth of her gratitude. In that moment, she realized that this was just the beginning of her journey. She had been given a second chance, and she was determined to make the most of it. As the night went on, Lily found herself surrounded by people who admired her work and wanted to hear her story. She felt a sense of belonging that she hadn't felt in a long time, and as she looked around the room, she knew that this was just the start of something incredible. But amidst all the excitement, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more to come. She had no idea what the future held, but she was ready to face it head-on. With her art as her weapon and her spirit as her guide, she knew that she could overcome anything. And as she stood there, surrounded by the buzz of the event, Lily made a silent promise to herself. She would keep painting, keep fighting, and keep sharing her story with the world. Because if there was one thing she had learned, it was that even in the darkest of times, there was always a glimmer of hope. And sometimes, that hope came in the most unexpected of forms. As the night drew to a close, Lily found herself standing on the balcony, looking out at the city lights. She felt a sense of peace wash over her, a feeling that she hadn't experienced in a long time. She knew that the road ahead would still be challenging, but she was ready to face it. And as she stood there, lost in thought, she felt a presence beside her. She turned to see Clint Eastwood standing there, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "You've come a long way, Lily," he said, his voice soft. "But this is just the beginning. The world is waiting for you." Lily smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile. "Thank you," she said, "for everything." Clint Eastwood nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "Just keep painting, Lily," he said, "and never forget where you came from." With that, he turned and walked back into the party, leaving Lily standing there, her heart full of gratitude and hope. She knew that her journey was far from over, but she was ready to take on whatever came her way. And as she looked out at the city lights, she felt a sense of determination wash over her. She was a fighter, a survivor, and an artist, and nothing was going to stop her from sharing her story with the world. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the city streets. Lily was packing up her modest art display, her hands trembling slightly as she carefully wrapped her paintings in protective cloth. The day had been slow, and the weight of her mounting medical bills pressed heavily on her mind. She was exhausted, not just from the physical toll of her illness, but from the emotional strain of fighting for her life every single day. Just as she was about to fold up her easel, she heard footsteps approaching. She looked up and saw him again, Clint Eastwood. He was dressed casually, his iconic squint and gravelly voice unmistakable. But this time, he wasn't alone. A small entourage of people accompanied him, including a woman in a sharp business suit and a man holding a camera. "Lily," Clint said, his voice warm but commanding, "I've been thinking about you." Lily's heart skipped a beat. She stood up, brushing her hands on her jeans, unsure of what to say. "Mr. Eastwood," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper, I didn't expect to see you again." He smiled, a knowing glint in his eyes. "I told you the world needs to see your art," he said, "and I meant it." He gestured to the woman beside him. "This is Sarah, my business manager. We've been discussing how to help you." Lily's mind raced. Help her? What did that mean? She glanced at Sarah, who gave her a reassuring smile. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Lily," Sarah said. "Clint has told me a lot about your work. We'd like to make you an offer." Before Lily could respond, Clint reached into his jacket pocket, and pulled out a check. He handed it to her without a word. Lily's eyes widened as she looked down at the amount written on it. Her breath caught in her throat. $100,000. The number seemed to blur before her eyes. She blinked, trying to make sense of it. I don't understand, she stammered, her voice shaking. This is too much. I can't accept this. Clint placed a hand on her shoulder, his grip firm but gentle. Yes, you can, he said. This isn't charity, Lily. This is an investment. In you. In your art. In your future. Tears welled up in Lily's eyes, and she struggled to hold them back. I don't know what to say, she whispered. This changes everything. Clint nodded. It's more than enough to cover your medical bills, he said. But it's also enough to give you a fresh start. To focus on your art without the weight of survival hanging over you. Lily's mind was a whirlwind of emotions, gratitude, disbelief, hope. It all swirled together in a dizzying mix. She looked at Clint, her voice trembling. Why are you doing this? She asked. You don't even know me. Clint's expression softened, and for a moment he looked almost vulnerable. Because I've been where you are, he said. Not in the same way, but I know what it's like to fight for something you believe in. And I see that fight in you, Lily. I see your passion, your talent, your resilience. The world needs more of that. Lily felt a lump form in her throat. She wanted to say so much, to express how much his kindness meant to her, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she simply nodded, tears streaming down her face. Clint turned to Sarah and the cameraman. Let's make this official, he said. Lily, we'd like to document your journey. Your story is powerful, and it deserves to be told. We want to help you share it with the world. Lily's eyes widened. Document my journey? She repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. You mean, like a documentary? Sarah nodded. Exactly, she said. We want to follow your progress, your art, your fight, your triumph. It's a story of hope, Lily, and we believe it will inspire countless others. The idea was overwhelming, but Lily couldn't deny the spark of excitement that ignited within her. This was more than she had ever dared to dream of. I don't know what to say, she said. This is incredible. Clint smiled. Say yes, he said, and let us help you take your art to the next level. Lily took a deep breath, her mind racing. She looked down at the check in her hands, then back at Clint. Yes, she said, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. Yes, I'll do it. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity. With Clint's support, Lily was able to focus on her treatment without the constant worry of how to pay for it. Her health began to improve, and with it, her art flourished. She poured her emotions into her work, creating pieces that were even more powerful and evocative than before. The documentary team followed her every step of the way, capturing her journey with a cinematic flair. They filmed her in her small apartment, painting late into the night. They accompanied her to chemotherapy sessions, capturing the raw reality of her fight. And they were there when she unveiled her new collection at a local gallery. A collection that told the story of her struggle and her hope. The exhibition was a resounding success. Critics praised her work, and buyers lined up to purchase her paintings. But more than that, people were moved by her story. They saw themselves in her journey, and they found hope in her resilience. Clint was there, of course, standing quietly in the background as Lily basked in the spotlight. He watched her with a sense of pride, knowing that he had played a part in her transformation. But he also knew that this was just the beginning. After the exhibition, Clint pulled Lily aside. "You've done incredible work," he said. "But this is just the start. There's so much more ahead of you." Lily nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude. "I know," she said, "and I couldn't have done it without you. You've given me so much more than money, Clint. You've given me hope." Clint smiled, his eyes twinkling. "Hope is a powerful thing," he said. "Never lose it." As the months passed, Lily's fame grew. Her story spread far and wide, inspiring people around the world. She became a symbol of resilience, a testament to the power of art and the human spirit. And through it all, Clint remained a constant presence in her life, a mentor and a friend. But even as she celebrated her success, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more to come. She had overcome so much, but her journey was far from over. She knew that there were still battles to fight, still stories to tell. And as she stood on the balcony of her new studio, looking out at the city lights, Lily felt a sense of anticipation. The future was uncertain, but it was also full of possibility. She was ready to face it, one brushstroke at a time. The morning after Clint Eastwood's visit, Lily woke up to a world that had shifted overnight. Her phone buzzed incessantly, a cacophony of notifications that she couldn't ignore. She picked it up, her heart pounding as she scrolled through the flood of messages, tags, and comments. Photos of Clint standing in her modest art booth, holding one of her paintings, had gone viral. The internet had exploded. The images were everywhere: Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Headlines screamed, "Clint Eastwood discovers street artist battling cancer," and "Hollywood legend changes young artist's life." The story spread like wildfire, each post amplifying the narrative of her struggle, her passion, and the unexpected moment that had changed everything. People were captivated by her story, by the raw emotion in her art, and by the sheer serendipity of it all. Lily's inbox was flooded with messages. Some were from well-wishers, offering words of encouragement and support. Others were from media outlets, requesting interviews and features. But the most surprising were the requests from art collectors, galleries, and even celebrities who wanted to buy her work. Overnight, her small sidewalk booth had become a global sensation. The media descended on her corner of the city, cameras and microphones in tow. Lily, still reeling from the whirlwind, found herself thrust into the spotlight. She gave interviews, her voice trembling but steady, as she shared her story. She spoke of her diagnosis, her fight, and how art had become her lifeline. She spoke of Clint Eastwood's kindness, his belief in her, and the $100,000 check that had turned despair into hope. The world listened, and the world responded. Donations poured in from strangers who wanted to help cover her medical bills. Offers for collaborations and commissions flooded her inbox. But the most life-changing moment came when she received an email from a prestigious New York gallery. They wanted to represent her. They wanted to give her a solo exhibition. Lily's hands shook as she read the email. She called Clint, her voice breaking as she told him the news. He listened quietly, then said, "This is your moment, Lily. Take it, and don't look back." The next few weeks were a blur of activity. Lily's life transformed at breakneck speed. She moved out of her tiny apartment and into a spacious studio, courtesy of the gallery's advance. Her medical bills were fully paid for, and she was able to focus on her treatment without the constant weight of financial stress. Her health improved, and with it, her art flourished. Her solo exhibition in New York was a triumph. The gallery was packed with art enthusiasts, collectors, and critics, all eager to see the work of the young artist who had captured the world's attention. The walls were adorned with her paintings, each one a piece of her story, each one a testament to her resilience. Clint Eastwood was there, of course. He stood quietly in the corner, watching as Lily moved through the crowd, her face glowing with a mix of pride and disbelief. When the evening wound down, he approached her, a small smile playing on his lips. "You've done it, Lily," he said. "You've turned your pain into something beautiful, and the world is better for it." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said. "You believed in me when no one else did." Clint shook his head. "I just gave you a push," he said. "You did the rest." A month later, Lily entered the hospital for her final round of chemotherapy. She carried with her more than just hope. She carried a handwritten letter from Clint Eastwood. It was simple, but powerful. A reminder to keep fighting, to keep telling her story. "Lily," the letter read, "you've already won the hardest battle, the one against yourself. Keep painting, keep living, and never forget where you came from. The world is waiting for your next masterpiece. Clint." Lily held the letter close as the nurses prepared her treatment. She felt a surge of determination, a fire that had been ignited by Clint's kindness and fueled by her own resilience. She wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. She was fighting for a future. In the months that followed, Lily's career skyrocketed. Her art was featured in galleries around the world, and her story inspired countless others. She became a symbol of hope, a living testament to the power of talent, courage, and a little faith. But amidst the fame and success, Lily never forgot her roots. She continued to paint, pouring her heart into every brushstroke. And in Clint Eastwood's private collection, hanging among his most treasured pieces, there was still one painting, a black-and-white Western landscape, painted by Lily during her darkest days. It was a reminder of an extraordinary moment, a testament to the power of kindness, and a symbol of the extraordinary journey that had brought them together. Lily's art was no longer about surviving. It was about thriving. And as she stood in her studio, surrounded by canvases and the hum of possibility, she knew that her journey had only just begun.